Testify by Rage Against the Machine here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Sharif Abdul Qudus with Anjali Kamat.
As the WTO talks collapse, we turn now to perhaps the country perhaps most profoundly impacted by U.S. trade during the neoliberal era. In the 15th year since the North American Free Trade Agreement was signed, Mexico continues to fall short of the lofty gains that backers of the neoliberal globalization had promised. Today, polls show that by a 2-to-1 margin, Mexicans believe they're on the losing end of NAFTA. The latest U.S. initiative in Mexico is also attracting scrutiny. Last month, the Bush administration and the Democratic-led Congress agreed on Plan Mexico, a $400 million program to fight Mexican drug trafficking. Much like its predecessor, Plan Colombia, the Mexico initiative has been criticized for emphasizing militarization and security rather than addressing social and economic causes. The bulk of the money will go to military contractors and Mexico's armed forces. The final version of the bill also omits several key provisions that would have linked funding to human rights. In a few moments, we'll talk to 3 guests about Plan Mexico. But first, we turn to an excerpt from last week's episode of Inside USA, an investigative news program airing on the network Al Jazeera English.
Culiacan, Mexico. This is a city on the front line of war, one that is at its heart deeply tied to policies made in Washington. Since Mexican President Felipe Calderón came to power, more than 4,000 have been murdered in drug trafficking-related crimes, many times more than the number of U.S. soldiers killed in Iraq and Afghanistan in the same time period. At stake, control of tens of billions of dollars of cocaine and methamphetamines flowing annually to American drug users. It's not just the traffickers who are being killed. Dozens of civilians have been caught up in the crossfire, journalists assassinated, and hundreds of Mexican security forces gunned down. In this Culiacan cemetery, the family of one policeman recently killed bury his body. He's being laid to rest in a modest grave next to the extravagant mausoleums built for slain drug traffickers.
It's always tough when you lose one of your men.
For Police Commander Manuel Hernandez, seeing his men fall has become a regular occurrence, and the fear of being killed is beginning to take its toll.
Of course I'm scared. I'm a human being. And I would be scared, or otherwise I would be crazy. But I'm more scared of not doing my duty for Mexico, out of fear for my life.
His officer's death is not expected to be the last. Dozens of graves here are being dug to accommodate the growing casualties. The violence in Sinaloa, home to some of the largest drug cartels in Mexico, is taking place on a massive scale. The capital, Culiacan, averages 4 executions a day. We followed local journalists and police on what has become a grisly daily ritual. On the streets, it seems that the huge number of security forces are completely powerless to stem the violence. Bodies are discovered almost on the hour in all parts of the city. As night falls on day 2 of our tour of this region, 3 more young men have been gunned down here on the streets of Culiacan. Bodies 7, 8, and 9 in less than 48 hours. And the violence is terrifying in its brutality. Recently, in a chilling message from the cartels, 9 bodies were decapitated, the heads dumped in the center of the city for police to collect. Often in response to the violence, police are accused of spraying quiet streets with bullets, with little regard for civilian life.
This is the bullet hole from the police that happened on Friday morning.
The residents here keep tallies on each day's escalating body count by reading what's referred to as the execution meter on the front page of one local newspaper. Mexican President Felipe Calderón, more than a year and a half ago, declared war on the cartels. 25,000 troops and police flooded into a number of cities. Also wading into the fight, the United States of America. Approximately $1.5 billion of direct military aid was pledged by President Bush. Called the Merida Initiative, or Plan Mexico, the move follows a similar blueprint to the widely criticized and ultimately failed Plan Colombia.
I made it very clear to the President that I recognize the United States has a responsibility in the fight against drugs.
Under the plan, America will provide training programs and military equipment. Undoubtedly, in terms of influence, it will also tie Mexico closer to Washington. In fact, just one day after the plan was signed into law by George Bush, serious questions were raised about exactly what sort of training the U.S. would provide. Shocking videos surfaced showing Mexican police undergoing a torture training session directed by a contractor believed to be working for a U.S. private security firm. In one video, the contractor drags an officer through his own vomit. In another, a victim receives shots of water up his nose, a common torture technique.
That they were training people to torture. The guards torturing, the police torturing.
Mercedes Murillo is one of Mexico's most vocal human rights activists. She believes corrupt police forces in Mexico are responsible for a number of murders and also involved in the drug trade itself, and that U.S. money and training will only make the situation worse.
In this we have in the States, some policemen are good, and some, of course, are bad. But the good ones, I'm afraid that these people are going to make all our police bad.
Regardless of who is killing who, there is no doubt that one of the biggest problems here is the staggering number of weapons on the streets. High-powered assault rifles and machine guns are easy to come by, despite strict gun laws here. On this street, we witnessed the body of one uniformed police officer shot dead on his way to work. The chances are that the bullets that riddled his car were fired from a U.S. gun. According to some sources, 2,000 illegal firearms are brought into Mexico every day from the United States.
The fact that the U.S. Constitution allows any person to freely buy, without any limitations, high-caliber weapons has made Mexico full of guns that fundamentally originated in the United States. And with their sophistication and firepower, they are much stronger than the military and police forces here.
So in a game of supply and demand, the drugs flow into America. U.S. guns flow into Mexico. It's a business known by all.
The same as you go and buy a hamburger, you can go and buy a gun. It's the same.
In America.
In America. All America.
One such weapon was traced to this Texas gun shop just across the border from Ciudad Juarez. Kalashnikovs sold here, like this one made in Las Vegas, Nevada, are now easier to buy after the Bush administration in 2004 failed to renew a ban on assault weapons and are now pouring into Mexico.
As long as the people over there are willing to pay $5,000 for a gun that you can buy for $600 over here, somebody's going to try to sneak one across the border.
Oh, it's anywhere you want to cross.
The federal government, according to Texas Sheriff Arvin West, has done little to stop the flood of weapons into Mexico.
We've seen as many as 13 semi-trucks going into Mexico, and the federal government just non-complacent about it. They could care less. It's simple. I mean, we've got 90 miles, or a little over 90 miles of border, right at 100 miles actually, of border in this county that's wide open.
On the Mexican side of the border, we watched several vehicles roll through with no more than a passing glance from customs officials here. Throughout Mexico, American guns continue to kill. Just weeks ago in the small town of El Pozo, 13 people were murdered, one of them a 14-year-old boy. The evidence of what happened here we found littered across the ground.
They're afraid that people will come and that when they find them, they'll shoot them.
Like refugees in a war zone, many residents are now packing up to leave. They believe the worst is yet to come. Critics say that Plan Mexico is following a tried and failed U.S. policy on drugs. As long as Washington continues to focus on cutting the supply to the U.S. rather than treating the drug problem from within, questions must be asked about its complicity in the escalating violence seen across the border. For those on the streets, the war goes on, fueled by America's guns on both sides.
So they mixing security with fear. They mixing security with politics. And they mixing security with lies.
What Mexico needs to do is enforce the laws that they've got. Start putting some of these bad guys in jail.
We have more people dead right now than in Iraq.
I guarantee our guys will go down there and, for lack of better words, will kick ass and take names.
Because it's the same. It's a war.
An excerpt of the program Inside USA. We're joined